Welcome to the December 2023 edition of City Connection. This live TV program, brought to you by the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, is brought to you by the Grand Rapids Community Media Center. We are here today on December 4th, 2023, and we have Commissioner Milinda Ysasi here today to join us and talk about what's going on in Grand Rapids. How are you doing, Commissioner?
I'm doing well, Allison. Thanks so much for having me again. It's nice to see you.
Absolutely, absolutely. We love having you on the show.
Thanks.
Always thankful to get your insight here at City Connection. We are streaming on Twitch and Channel 24 if you're watching on cable. So there's been a lot going on. The end of the year is always a busy time here in the city. I recently saw the results from the Human Rights Campaign in their Municipal Equality Index, which examines how municipal laws, policies, and services, how inclusive those are of LGBTQ plus people who live and work in Grand Rapids. And they looked at non-discrimination laws, the municipality as an employer, municipal services, law enforcement, and leadership on LGBTQ plus equality. In that report, Grand Rapids scored 100 out of 100. When you see these results, do you think that they're reflective of the reality in Grand Rapids for LGBTQ plus folks?
I think the Human Rights Campaign is a really well-regarded organization. I hesitated a little bit to say what it is like for someone who is LGBTQI, because I am not, and I never want to put myself into understanding what somebody else's experience is. I think it's a reflection of our intention as a city to make sure that individuals, regardless of, as a city we look at gender and race, LGBTQ, gender identity, religion, all these things that make up who individuals are. And in the state of Michigan, we're also really lucky to have the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which was expanded to include LGBTQI individuals under Governor Whitmer. And so I think our state as a whole, and then I hope Grand Rapids is also mirroring that. You mentioned a couple of the things that the Human Rights Campaign looks at. One of the pieces is really having a group like PRISM, which is our employee resource group, that is focused on making sure that LGBTQI employees have a voice in our policies. What is the experience like to be a connection point to one another? This past year, I also know some of that score increased because it also identifies what's the connection point for LGBTQI employees and individuals as it relates particularly to law enforcement. And so Lieutenant Maureen O'Brien is that main liaison now, working with those that are in the PRISM EGR and the GRPD. Also, the other piece is looking at how are we categorizing gender and non-binary ways, looking at our individual healthcare. The one thing that isn't included in the index for this year was the changes that we made to gender affirming care in this last go round with our healthcare plan. So when we made the switch, we moved to a different provider. And so some of those things need to be bargained. And so it's not necessarily as easy as we would like it to be to kind of change it, but we were able to change that. And so hopefully that will be reflected. I don't know if you can get more than 100, but I think that can be a recognition of those things that, we need to do. We've also taken, I know this year at the Pride Center's Pride Festival, we had an active booth. I was there with the Latina Network of West Michigan, and it was a huge event. I think it was the largest Pride Festival that has happened in Grand Rapids. And so those things matter. What are we sponsoring? Do employees feel connected? Do they feel like they can go to those events? And are we making those considerations, even in things like, just not just the experience, but also those city services when we talk to people, when we identify ourselves, when we identify individuals. So I hope so.
Yeah. Just for context for the viewers at home who maybe haven't seen the report yet, there was 100 points available, but then there were also these bonus points so you could make more than 100 out of 100 score. I think the only category that the city didn't get a perfect score in was under the municipality as an employer because of that. The healthcare didn't have trans-inclusive benefits.
So I think that will definitely, hopefully, increase in the future as they see because I think that would have been, the change would have been in October, or by the time that it was done. But anyways, so,
Okay.
not anyways, yes, I hope that is reflective. I want Grand Rapids to be a place where those that are LGBTQI feel that it's a good employer and also a great place to live, and also reflected in the state as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Change of topic, but
Sure.
it's November. No, it's not anymore. It's December.
It's
It was
December.
November.
It was November, we were together last.
Right, which is a big election month. And we have now a new state law that requires local election clerks to administer at least 9 days of early
Yes.
voting. And that has been state law ever since the Michigan voters approved a statewide ballot proposal, ballot proposal in 2022
Yep.
to expand those voting rights. The polling sites offering early voting were established last month by unanimous vote of the City Commission. Can you tell us about the polling locations and how that decision was made?
Yeah, so, I think Grand Rapids, as I was walking in the building here, I saw our ballot box that we have for absentee voting, because prior to that early voting, it was no reason absentee voting, which was really expanded in the state, which I also think was great. Grand Rapids, our city clerk worked very diligently to work with our library system to make sure that we had those boxes, not just outside of City Hall, but in other places throughout neighborhoods. So it's the 9 days, so it's like it covers like 2 Sundays. There are going to be 3 sites that will be available in the presidential primary and then the August primary, and that's going to be St. Peter and Paul in the 1st ward, Ottawa Hills High School in the 3rd ward, and then GRPS University in my ward in the 2nd ward. And typically those are selected based on, the connection point or the proximity. We're looking at things like parking, how much space do we have. This is also, all of those locations are a little bit larger, and I think we don't know. We anticipate people will want to engage in that early in voting, and so it's better for us to be prepared at a site that has the ability to have good parking and to make sure we can put out our equipment and have easy access to our volunteers as well. So I think for sure those 9 days, each site will be open a total of 8 hours. The specific hours are not noted yet, but I do believe on Tuesdays and Thursdays it'll be open till 7 p.m. And so me being in the 2nd ward, I could go to St. Peter and Paul. You don't have to go to your ward. You can also take your absentee ballot there. And then in the general election, which is going to be a big election, of course, on all levels, the DeVos Place will also be another site downtown. And I don't know, I think we'll have to confirm with the city clerk, I assume that we'll be able to validate parking for individuals that park in our city lot, because it's right across the street. We'll need to make sure we communicate that, because you do get validation if you go up to our 2nd floor, or go up to the 9th floor if you are voting in person during our regular election. So I'm really appreciative that the city clerk has worked. East Grand Rapids did a little bit of test run in it in the November election. We did not do it, obviously, last month. We just had one thing on the ballot in Grand Rapids. But I think that there has been a lot of support from the state and legislators to make sure that everyone has access to be able to vote. People work a lot of different schedules, things come up, and so that no reason absentee is a great thing, but these 9 days, I think we'll be able to see what are some other barriers, and hopefully we can eliminate those as well for individuals. So I'm happy about it.
So if voters do want to vote early, do they have to bring their own ballot with them, or?
Nope, they can go there and it'll just be like being at a polling place, or they can bring a previously requested absentee ballot and turn it in there, just like they could on our 2nd floor at City Hall.
Perfect. And votes will not be counted still until 8 p.m. election.
Yes, yep, I know that was something that was being looked at. I think in the end, where it kind of laid out in the language is not that. So they're able to do some pre-entry, maybe not entry, but sort of coordination and connection, I think as early as 7 a.m. on that day. But I know we have a lot of people in City Hall, and our city clerk's office is working really diligently to make sure that in 2024, people are going to have lots of ways to vote and have a lot of confidence in multiple locations that their vote will be cast.
Moving forward, as of December 1, applications for the city's Neighborhood Match Fund are open. Can you tell us a bit about what this fund is and what people should know if they maybe want to throw their hat in the ring?
Yeah, so this is a great program that was started through our Office of Equity and Engagement. Ms. Stacy Stout, who is not at the city anymore, but somebody I've known for a long time, really led this, but also with a team of neighborhood volunteers, individuals who had some experience in philanthropy, community building, and it was a way for neighborhood groups, different individuals to say, I have an idea or a project for something in my little pocket of the world, right? And so a lot of times people have an idea, but maybe they need a little bit of money for it. So we're not talking large grants, it's up to $5,000. In the past, it has supported things like the Black Book Exchange, supported things like neighbors helping other neighbors to clear off sidewalks and things like that, used to rent out like lawn equipment if individuals, so they wouldn't fall into, not being in compliance with our city ordinances. I think there's been some things around like health and hygiene and just access to different supportive services. I think there was something around dental care that was supported last cycle. But what's great about this is they've really worked to eliminate barriers to be able to complete the application. I believe you're also able to do this via video so that, barriers around writing, barriers around like, I've never written a grant application, and then it's decided upon by a group of peers of other neighborhood leaders. I think there's about 7 individuals that are a part of that. So a lot of times I think December gets really busy, and so as we were looking at the list of things, I was like, I want to highlight this because they have until the end of this month. Again, it's December, not November, and it's something really easy to do. And there's a lot of good examples. At our neighborhood summit last year, we highlighted a few of the winners. We had a great video so people can take a look and, maybe they don't know what they want to do, but they want to have an impact, and that could generate some interest and ideas.
So do these project ideas have to be contained in one neighborhood, or can it stretch across the city?
Yeah, it can stretch across the city, but typically it might be happening in one neighborhood or one specific area. It does need to be open to anyone, so it can't be closed, since it is through the city, it needs to be accessible to everyone. But what we see is that, it might be something in the Creston neighborhood that maybe is related to healthy food access. And it's going to be situated, maybe between the library and something else. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but I know that they are working on healthy food access in the Creston neighborhood. And so something like that, or the Black Book Exchange, it might not be in every single ward, but it could be in particular wards, and to increase reading levels and, also like reduce waste. So we're not like all buying all these books, although I have like 5 books on my nightstand right now that I want to get through. So, yeah.
And how long do folks have to fill out this application?
They have until the end of this month, so it is through this month, and it has to be projects that will be executed through March to August of 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another big thing that's come up recently is that many Grand Rapidians might see a water rate increase of just under 4% to their quarterly water bill. Can you talk us through why that might be, and if people are struggling to pay their utilities as it is now, can you point them in the direction for some support for that?
Absolutely. So at our last commission meeting, we had what's called our annual water and sewer rate study that was presented to the full commission. This happens every single year. I think our water and sewer system, it is a complex system, but it's also very transparent. There's also a very good video on the website that Janessa, who was our past utility manager, and now Ty, who is the utility manager, worked on to make sure, again, if you see it in black and white, it might not really ring like this is making sense. But when you watch a video and it explains it, it becomes much more clear. Yes, unfortunately, probably across the board, we're seeing some increases. I think a little over 6% on the water side and a little over 1% on the sewer side. And so what we do is we look at sort of historical usage, and then we would make, so then there's a determination of what that percentage looks like, and then we make some increases or decreases based on the knowledge that we have about usage or other pieces like that. Now that is for Grand Rapidians. We are also responsible for other water systems, but sometimes, like I think it's the city of Walker, they might make a contribution to reduce their rates. So we look at a variety of things, right? It's the infrastructure, and a lot of that is related to the infrastructure pieces. Certainly during COVID, we saw an increase in usage because a lot of people were at home, they weren't necessarily away, and so that is certainly one of the drivers as well. Today is actually the last day to make a public comment, so we had what's called a 20-day comment period for individuals to voice their support, concerns, questions, or anything like that. And I know Ty, again, our utility analyst, is very open to looking at all of those pieces. I do think, typically these are presented, they are done with a lot of care and connection, also auditing to make sure we're, considering all the appropriate things. So I expect that it will be unanimously supported when we meet tomorrow, or I'm sorry, I think on the 12th, we have it on our calendar on the 12th. I'm getting my weeks confused. But yes, we do have other supports through our water department, our utilities, to be able to work with individuals who might be struggling to pay their water bill, and also different ways that we would connect with people to talk about what their usage is. Is there something going on in the home? Is there something maybe that people aren't aware of, a leak or things like that, that might be driving up the usage? The great thing also with GR Pay It, I have to give a shout out for GR Pay It with our city treasurer, is that you can make payments on your water bill monthly, and so that has been something over the last couple of years that is, the ability to do that online has helped quite a bit. So I think if people are struggling, to please reach out to our 311 office and we can get you connected into the right department to have that conversation.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. It's about time for our first break now. When we come back, we'll hear more from Commissioner Ysasi, so stay tuned.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to another episode of City Connection. I'm here with Commissioner Milinda Ysasi. Thank you so much for being with us today. We can jump right back into the questions if you're ready for it.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So Mobile GR Director Josh Naramore will
Yeah.
be leaving his position on December 15th, taking a new position with the National Association of City Transportation Officials. In his place for the time being, Assistant Mobile GR Director Jennifer Casper will act as interim Mobile GR Director effective this week, December 8th. And then the city will conduct a nationwide search for a permanent replacement for Mobile GR Director. So what's the city looking for in a person when trying to fill this role? And what type of work does the Mobile GR Director do?
I think, in the past, Mobile GR was known as parking services and probably something even, more very specific. But I think with Josh's arrival and the foresight of past city leadership and current city leadership to really think about not just parking but mobility services overall. We are a growing city. We have lots of opportunity, and that can sometimes represent, tension or challenges, right? I talk to people about parking in the city. We do have parking available in our city lots and our private lots. During the pandemic, the revenue for parking went down significantly, and we did supplement with ARPA dollars because it is one of those core services that a city should be providing. But beyond that, thinking about things like our micro-mobility programs, our Dash, I think we're on the Dash 3.0, and how do we connect people into different neighborhoods and corridor points. And so, when I saw the news, I was, sent Josh a note and just said, thank you for everything you've done. I think we are, it's always a bittersweet piece, but it sounds like a great opportunity. I know it's a great opportunity. And so I believe the city manager and those that are in his leadership will be looking for individuals that can continue that strategic plan that they have laid out with Josh. And also, we have a Mobile GR Commission. So those are resident advisors as it relates to mobility in our city. And I think it's a topic that, as we talked last month on the community master plan, parking and mobility options are going to be so core to how our city is designed over the next 20 years as we have this bridge to our future. And so somebody who has that ability to, look strategically, I imagine is something that the city manager will be looking at. Somebody who can also connect and coordinate with other departments. Josh would work quite closely with our planning director, Kristen Turkelson, quite closely with Parks and Recreation, quite closely with the police department. And so under his leadership and the leadership of our city manager, working to move that ticketing of vehicles into a civilian workforce outside of the police department. And I think, again, that is really a focus on what can our police department focus on that is necessary for the training that they have, and what can we focus on that can come through our mobility. So it will be I think strategy, but also execution. Grand Rapids is the second largest city in the state. We want to be known for having multiple options and that people can get around, and also safety. I think pedestrian safety, as we think about these winter months, is something that I know Josh certainly championed as a avid bicycle rider, and so somebody who can understand how do we coexist in a city that is bustling and growing with also pedestrians and young people getting to and from work and school.
Absolutely. A billion different places we can take that, because you kind of segued into a few different ones. Why don't we pick up and talk about the city's community master plan? I believe we've talked about this last month, but since then we've had a few sessions of community input. So I'd love to hear what the city has learned from those meetings with residents and what takeaways are maybe going to make their way into the CMP.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go, I think it was the day after I was here last month, to go to the session that was at GRPS University that Tuesday. And it was a packed house of individuals that were wanting to connect as we get into this third phase of meetings and we have these conversations. What is this, what is this plan really, going to look like? I think what people want us to know is that they want to continue to have the ability to, I think, have identity in their neighborhoods. I think I've lived in Grand Rapids my whole life, and I lived in every single ward. But as a 15-year resident of Creston neighborhood, there are elements that I like in my neighborhood that I want it to be known for, and people hopefully can have that choice of where to live. I think we heard that clearly as affordability and availability of housing continues to be a top priority for most people living in Grand Rapids. Even if they have affordable and available housing, they want to make sure that their children, that their neighbors, that people that they work with have that ability to choose to live in Grand Rapids, and that is going to be top of mind. A focus on climate change and climate resiliency. I think as a city, we have this climate that we have, right? I mean, it's almost 40 degrees out, I think, today. It feels a little cold, but that's pretty warm for right now if you think about historically what, our city and the state has looked like at, beginning of December. And so understanding, well, we need to adapt to individuals like climate refugees that might be coming from the coast to seek out Michigan as a refuge, as having lots of fresh water nearby. And so I think things like that. Also, how do we reduce our carbon footprint, not only as a municipality, but also as individuals and communities and neighborhoods, and how do we make choices around reduction of energy, not just for those who can afford it, and so making sure that it's going to be accessible for individuals that might want to make that change, but perhaps investing in, something as it relates to a specific water heater or solar panels would not be out of reach for individuals, and how does that connect into hopefully other federal policy that might be the case. And then I would also say mobility, continues to be that piece. Lots of questions about how do we make it, easier to get from one place to another, thinking about these new attractions that will be coming in these future years, like an amphitheater, like the proposed soccer stadium. How will people be able to get to and from that and access that in hopefully an affordable way, and in a way that adds more quality of life versus burden. I heard when I was there, I think the last thing I'll say is somebody said, I really want it to only be 10 minutes to get most places in Grand Rapids, and I think that's what I used to say 10 years ago. Now, coming here, I really need to give myself at least 30 minutes because of traffic, and I'm coming from the third ward and coming over into the first ward. So housing, climate resiliency, ability to have choice and where individuals live, those and mobility will remain. I think that's some of the top pieces as relates to our master plan.
So what's next for the master plan? Are there any more opportunities for residents to get involved?
Individuals can continue to provide any feedback as it relates to the community master plan. Individuals, there are still some neighborhood groups that are doing some connection points and outreach. October was a busy month for year-end meetings as it relates to a lot of neighborhood association groups who were connected and contracted with our planning department to provide insight. Those are probably wrapping up. They probably wrapped up actually at the end of last month, but individuals can still share any thoughts as it relates to community master plan by sending comments to our city clerk's office, and that will be added into the official record where all of us commissioners and also planning commissioners get that information.
And before we wrap up this second segment of the show, let's talk a little bit more about the streets. We talked about mobility. What about street cleaning this time of year and plowing? Is there anything viewers need to know around those topics?
Absolutely. So last time we talked about the odd even parking and just reminding individuals of that, because it's not only for the ease of getting into the streets, but it's also for the street cleaning pieces and making sure that we're able to do those city services. When we think about this time of year, we start to think about snow that is more than 3 inches. And so that's when we would begin our plowing services. So typically, after a weather event like that, or I feel like I don't remember how much snow we got on Halloween, but I know that was probably the only time where it snowed significantly, right?
Yeah.
Because I wore the wrong shoes that day. But anyways, so typically what happens is we would go through those major streets. So Division, Monroe, Leonard, Fulton and Burton would be what we call those primary streets. And so we really want to focus on those first, and that's where our attention goes. And we use de-icing techniques there. Then we would go into those secondary streets, our side streets, our local streets, alleyways, cul-de-sacs. I think I have a couple of constituents in cul-de-sacs, and they typically are done sort of at the end, just given some of the nature of the plowing that needs to occur. Sometimes we do need to put more attention on those primary streets, given whatever the conditions might be. So sometimes people will write and say, how come nobody has come through? If it's particularly bad, it may require going around to those major streets again. We have really worked to try to reduce some of those salting techniques, so you're not going to see those de-icing pieces on those local streets or those secondary pieces. I was also reading as I was prepping, like we've made some investments in the equipment so that there can be more efficiency. So then we're going and doing the snow plowing. We're not having to use hopefully as much time in the trucks and reducing that amount of time on our streets, right? So reducing those emissions. And then, so that's kind of the streets. Some people might be familiar in 2020, we created a pilot program, a sidewalk clearing pilot program. And that year it didn't snow, I think, over 3 inches during the time frame.
Of course.
And anyways, what I'll just say, because I know we got to wrap up the segment, is that it's about 200 miles of our 900 miles of sidewalks. And so that was really it's still the requirement of the business owner or the property owner or the homeowner to clear that, but the contractors we work with will clear those sidewalks. And so those are a lot of our major roads, and on our website I couldn't tell you all the streets, it's too much of a listing. But that was part of some other cities sort of adding quality of life as it relates to like winter plowing and sidewalk shoveling. So yeah.
Okay, so make sure that you're looking at the street signs when you park.
Yes.
Have a shovel ready and be patient. If you are on a residential street, the plows will come.
Yes, there is a winter preparedness guide too that we have on the city website. So if people are just, maybe they've moved here, or just a first-time homeowner, kind of look at those things and things to even keep in your car to make sure that you're safe during this winter season. We do live in Michigan.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're heading into our second break now, but when we come back, Commissioner Ysasi will be taking questions from you. So to take part, send questions or comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org, or tweet us at GRTV Access, or comment on the GRTV Facebook page.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
who is going to take some questionnaires from all of you at home. So thank you again for being here. Once we get those questions, perfect. We have our first question here. This commenter said, I just read an article on the Rapidian about GRPS using the money from Reimagine GRPS to fix some buildings. But they're also closing 10 other buildings, including the school I went to growing up, Westwood. I struggle to understand how closing buildings will benefit the students, but I'd love to see that money go to support teachers and students, not just facility upgrades and school closures. That one came from Jen. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. My dad was the principal at Westwood for like 10 years, so I saw that as well. A reminder to everyone that the City of Grand Rapids and GRPS are separate entities, but I'm happy to offer some context as I see it as, a resident of the city and also a member of what we call our City of Grand Rapids and GRPS body. We actually have a meeting with them this week. That's a public meeting that's happening on Wednesday afternoon. And, I think with the Reimagine campaign, there was a lot of discussion that the focus was on buildings not being utilized and knowing that there was, I think, tens of $1 million in undeferred maintenance that was happening in the district and needing to make some difficult choices as they have also looked at the population decrease that probably reducing the amount of buildings that they would need to make that deferred maintenance in, thus closing. And, I can't say if they will sell some things. I think that's something to watch. A lot of these locations, I know there was something in the Black Hills neighborhood in the fall that they were looking at doing a housing project, and ultimately they decided to make that into a green space. But I think as we think about while I can't comment on how GRPS will use that money because I don't have that authority, I think just like coming here or coming to our city commission meetings and going to the school board meetings to share your thoughts with those elected leaders as well as GRPS staff, it's probably the best way to share that. But I do think the parameters of the millage proposal were around broad uses as it related to overall capital and facility plans.
And I do believe the district hasn't fully made that decision to concretely close those buildings yet. So still in conversation, worth going to some meetings.
Yes, absolutely.
Being in front of some ears that can do something about it. Next comment or question is, I'm thankful we finally got our dash roads back on Division this year, but disappointed they're only Wednesday through Friday. Is there a plan to open those on Mondays and Tuesdays at some point?
It doesn't say who this is from, but I feel like I know who it might be because I get comments about the dash as well. At this point, no, I don't believe there are any plans to expand that. We mentioned in the previous segment the revenue loss to Mobile GR as it related to the pandemic. And so really working to recover what were some of the revenue coming in from our parking structures, which would help to that overall budget to be able to fund these other mobility options that we have, right? So the city making the investment, the rapid operating it for us. And so that schedule is really based upon that usage. And then also what is the expense associated with operating the dash on those timeframes? So I hope in the future that, revenue levels, our budget will allow it to be at a certain level to increase that. It is weighing out the multiple modes of mobility and the costs associated with them. So I'm glad that they're happy about the Division site and that, kind of is the latest and greatest as it relates to the days of the week service.
And for viewers at home who might not know the bus system here in Grand Rapids, can you tell them what the Dash Line is?
Yeah, so the Dash Line is the downtown area shuttle, and so it is a way to be able to connect individuals with the multiple layouts of our downtown area. We know that a lot of times people don't want to search for those parking pieces, and so there are dash lots throughout the city where people can park in at a greatly reduced cost and be able to jump on that dash line to go from like Division all the way to where we're at here today, like by Bridge Street Market on Leonard Street. And so what it hopefully is doing is connecting people, certainly residents with different parts of neighborhood, hopefully jobs, shopping, but also those who might be visiting Grand Rapids and want to connect into these different access points. I get a lot of people ask me, I want to have this in my neighborhood, or I want to connect downtown to like East Town. I think all of those ideas are probably things that people have discussed in our master planning process. At this point, this is our third revision of it, and I'm glad that we're able to take that feedback of individuals as we made those changes so that we can get the most utilization out of the dash, because that's what's going to help keep it going, is people utilizing the shuttle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our next question is, I heard it is supposed to be a mild winter this year. It's not snowing outside now. What does the city do with funds allocated to plowing and salting if it's not used? And that question's from Blake.
Yeah. It's supposed to be the El Nino, which I never know if that's like the mild or if it means that it's going to be mild and then we have this wild, ice storm or something like that. The reality is there's really typically not something that is left over. I mean, I think it would have to be maybe 80 degrees to say that there wouldn't be some sort of maintenance to occur. There's still also the cost to have the vehicles and the capital associated with those pieces. And typically, even if it's not sort of consistently snowy, that one-time event or a couple events may cause it to be much more extreme. So a couple years ago, before I was in commission, I think we shut down City Hall. We had never shut down City Hall. We had those horrible ice storms. A couple, I remember, this was in the mid 2000s, but like having to walk places, I could not move my car. So we have our those budgets for each one of those departments, and so sometimes there needs to reallocate pieces to different parts of the budget. So yes, it might be identified in a certain line item, but could go to another piece, say in that same departmental budget.
Gotcha. So even if there's no snow, there's still a budget.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than sort of like our individual budgets. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's real money, and we want to be accountable to it. And typically, if we do start to see that as well, we might have a briefing by our Public Works Director about, okay, we might do this instead, but sometimes we have additional maintenance pieces that might need to be Public Works things, done at some of our other, parks or other sites where we might invest in that.
Another question. I just read a Michigan Department of Civil Rights article saying they were investigating over 20 complaints of discrimination against the city of Grand Rapids and the GRPD, or the Grand Rapids Police Department. What does the city investigate these complaints as well? And this is from Jorge.
Yeah. Thanks, Jorge, for that write-in as well. So the city of Grand Rapids, I believe it was 2019, or it might have even been 2017 or 2018, where the Michigan Department of Civil Rights did hold hearings here in Grand Rapids and a number of other cities, I think Flint and Saginaw, most of the larger urban areas in the state of Michigan, to really hear from individuals to see, did they feel that their civil rights were violated in the course of engagement with city services or particularly law enforcement. I was not on the commission at that time. I do know a number of people attended those. I do think since the original article was posted, some of those have been resolved, and actually we voted on a few of those, I think at least in this fall too, where they have been resolved. I want to say maybe the last meeting before we had one. We take every complaint seriously. We were talking ahead of the break that we do have also our Office of Accountability and Oversight, which isn't an office that existed probably in that same time frame that all of these incidences were made. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights has a different sort of level of investigation than, say, the city as a whole. We have our Internal Affairs Unit. We have this Office of Accountability and Oversight. And so individuals can still, file with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. They can file with our Internal Affairs Department and the Office of Accountability and Oversight. So we do take those seriously. Sometimes it is the statute of limitations pieces. But I would say if anyone has any concerns with our police department interaction, to please reach out to Mr. Brandon Davis, who is the director of that department, and also subsequently file for an internal affairs complaint if they'd like.
Great.
Yeah.
I think it's about time that we head out to our next break. So if you have more questions, you can send those in on Facebook in the comment section, or you can tweet to us at GRTV Access. But we will be right back after this break.
Okay, so on the next one.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
Back here with us on City Connection is Commissioner Milinda Ysasi, and we have more questioners from viewers, so let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Our first question is coming up right now.
Okay. Yes.
The question is about fiber internet options
Yes.
in the area. So this commenter said, I'm frustrated with the lack of fiber internet options in my area, and despite numerous requests to providers, what is the city actively doing to expand fiber internet availability and ensure that providers are not neglecting certain neighborhoods in their service rollouts? And this question is from Min.
Min, thanks for the question. That's my nickname. You know, I was just mentioning that I've gotten this question, at least in the last week, somebody was asking and expressing the same thing, being frustrated. The providers do not typically give us a timeline of when, you know, they might be expanding in certain neighborhoods. That was a request I had gotten from an individual. I do believe it was our city engineer said, you know, we'll do some outreach, but I think the best piece is, I know they've noted that they've reached out to the providers, but it's for them to continue to connect with the providers. I think if there is any specific feedback or feeling like maybe people are not connected in a certain neighborhood, reaching out to our 311 department to share that. Because, you know, I know sometimes it feels, oh, reach out to 311, but 311 helps us to collect and aggregate data so we can understand what are the challenges facing neighborhoods. So we do look at that very closely. You know, if all of a sudden in a certain block or a certain neighborhood or a certain ward, we see an uptick of this one particular area, we will start to ask some questions. You know, it might be, it's not really a leading indicator, it's more of lagging, but it helps us to track concerns and, you know, give it the appropriate priority. So, yeah.
311.
Yeah.
This next question is, what is the city doing about the homeless population in Grand Rapids? It seems like every day I see more people downtown and at express exits asking for money, and this question is coming from Kenneth.
Thanks, Kenneth. You know, this is a question that I think comes up very regularly in our city. Also, it is cold right now. You know, even though it's 40 degrees out, it is very cold to be outside if you do not have a shelter. And so, you know, the things that the city has focused on, try to take a proactive role of how do we increase the availability and affordability of housing, but specifically supportive and rapid rehousing in our community. So I think 2 commission meetings ago, or maybe the last commission meeting, we did have an update at our public safety committee from community rebuilders, which was focused on, they're going into different parts of the city where we do see an uptick of individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and try to understand what are the challenges associated with their situation. Is it typically it might be something of, it could be losing a job, it could be a medical condition, it could be maybe they're not from this community. We oftentimes in Grand Rapids see more people coming into our city because the amount of services that we have a number of shelters, we have a number of housing housing providers. We are an urban area that has more access, that has connection points into, we talked about the Dash earlier. And so I don't know that it's such an abundance. I think we have resources and people are seeking the resources out in our city. We've worked with groups like Mel Trotter to provide what's called personal storage units for individuals who may be experiencing homelessness. Some people have said to us, I don't feel comfortable going into any of the shelters in our city. I feel more comfortable being outside. We're also trying to balance the health and safety pieces of individuals having so many objects on their person and to provide the storage facility that is accessible to them. And then, working with other organizations. So the Fusion Center, Crossroads Church, that can provide things like showers or different connection points for individuals, because that permanent and supportive housing is what is going to help us to reduce homelessness. We are connecting with a variety of shelter providers. They shared their frustrations, I think, earlier this fall about the lack of staffing, jobs that are typically a little bit more difficult, dealing with individuals who may be having a mental health situation, who might be inebriated because maybe they're self-medicating, individuals who are frustrated with the system and just overwhelmed at what they're experiencing. And so I know, in September, Mel Trotter did share a story of that, where there are shelter beds, but maybe not enough individuals to, safely provide that care. And then lastly, last spring, we engaged as a commission enacting a few different ordinances. So, I think the question was on homelessness, but then there was a bit as it related to asking for money and sort of soliciting people at expressway entrances and exits. And so we have heard reports of individuals maybe being more aggressive in that, following individuals. And so one of the ordinances is around that aggressive behavior as it relates to a request for money, looking at specific areas, sort of our banking institutions, as well as that personal items and what individuals are able to carry on their person. And so it was a challenging decision. I think our commission looked at it from actually the last commission. It was December of 2022 that this came up to us. We had a new commission, had multiple discussions on it, and then this was enacted in, I think, early spring. And so please know that this is not something that's going to be solved overnight. I think every day our homeless outreach team, multiple providers, our continuum of care, which is outside of the city of Grand Rapids, but also city of Grand Rapids individuals, are understanding how can we have an impact, and specifically as it relates to our vulnerable populations, young people. And so, again, it might seem simplistic, but reporting and contacting somebody at 311 if you think somebody might be experiencing homelessness, because then our homeless outreach team can also connect. We can't be in every single place, but we can talk to individuals and see what supports and services that they might need. And so that public safety meeting is available online, so if anybody did want to hear a little bit deeper report, that is available.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, the conversations about our unhoused population in Grand Rapids don't seem to be going anywhere. So
No.
a lot of people have questions.
Absolutely.
The next question is about elections. You talked about elections coming up. What is the city doing to make sure there aren't any rigged ballot boxes and that people aren't voting in the name of their dead relatives? This is a question from Jared.
Thanks, Jared, for the question. I think that it really starts at our state level. So the state has done quite a bit to ensure transparency in election law. Actually, I know our city clerk, Joel Hondorp, worked with a couple of other appointed city clerks around the state in the 2022 cycles to really say our elections are transparent, they're safe. The amount of election tampering is not occurring because of the requirements that you have for the identification, because of the requirements that we have, expanding things like no reason absentee voting. It allows it to be able to have that additional checkpoint where you're submitting an application, it's coming to you, you have to turn it in, and then subsequently working with all of our precinct captains. Lots of double counting. We have our elections commission, which is made up of our city attorney, our city assessor, Paula Jasper, who are working to make sure that that is the case. I fully can say our city elections, our elections in the years that I've been on the commission and the years before that and going into 2024, I do not believe that is something that we need to worry about. We need to trust in the systems and process that we put into place at the local level, and then also know that the state is providing those resources and supports as well.
Great, thank you. Elections are fair and secure.
I believe that strongly.
This next question is, why are there differences between municipality rate increases for water? My city has a 3% higher increase than my neighbors down the street.
Yep. So this goes back to, and I don't know if this might be somebody who is in the city and then thinking about their neighbors in Walker, which could certainly be the case. So in the segment, but I know we kind of went through that quickly, is that some municipalities might decide to make what's called a deposit into their water and sewer system fund so that they are keeping those rates steady for their constituents or for their residents. So that's really dependent. While we might be the provider and managing the overall system, every municipality still has that oversight as it relates to what they want to put in and what is coming from their budget. So that's why it might be different.
Okay, so that's why there's some discrepancies. Next question. When doing a national job search for a job like to replace the mobile GR director, does the city look for local applicants first? I think it's important that someone managing parking and transportation services in Grand Rapids be very familiar what it's like to live in Grand Rapids. And that's a question from Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, so I think when, having been on what's called our civil service body, I've been able to see some of these national searches, play out. I would say that just because something is a national search, that absolutely includes local applicants. What we want to do is to make sure that when we look at the applicant pool, that for a role at that executive level, we do want to look at individuals, it may or may not be somebody from California. It could be somebody from Milwaukee or Wisconsin or a suburb of Chicago, where there might be a lot of different, population connection points, other investment connection points. Every state is different, different laws govern states. And so that's something we take into consideration, but absolutely local applicants are considered in a national search. And while the decision to hire won't be the city commission's, that is solely a decision at the staff level, so the city manager and then the appropriate leaders that work with him and manage mobile GR, individuals are certainly encouraged to apply locally. So, yeah.
Great. Great. And those are all of our questions from the public.
Yeah.
So we can get back into, we have time for one more question.
Can we go back to, what we didn't talk about, Allison, was the Rosa Parks Circle update.
That was the question I was going to ask you for our last minute here.
Mostly because I haven't been. So Rosa Parks Circle, many people know that that rink opens for the season, and it was scheduled. It was originally pushed back to November 30th, but then got pushed back again. You and I checked out the Facebook page, which has all the updates related to Rosa Parks Circle, and it does say it's open. There is an online, if you go to the Facebook page or our city website, there's online reservations that people can make out for the next 2 weeks. To make reservations, it's free. For admission for 17 and under, it's $2. 18 and over, it's $4, and that includes skate rental. But you can also walk up as well. And last week, Friday, was the kind of official kickoff to the holiday season. We had the Santa Parade in November, but that was the tree lighting downtown. And so it wasn't raining. I think it was raining that day and not snowing. I didn't make it there, but saw some of the images. So it's just a reminder that there's a lot of great things going on downtown. I think during COVID as a city, we talked about how do we become an all-season city, right? I think we were maybe used to hibernating a little bit, but there are, skating going on downtown. Downtown Grand Rapids Inc., DGRI, will have their World of Winter series that will kick off in the new year. Lots of great installations and fun events, silent discos, those things. Our GR Outside group, which you can rent things like camping equipment, but in the winter you can get like a sled rental and be able to go to one of our beautiful hills and go sledding and maybe get a hot chocolate afterwards. And then also there's some other things like snowshoeing and cross-country skiing at like Indian Trails Golf Course in the 3rd Ward off of 28th Street. So there's lots of things for people to do this winter, and I think last winter I took my niece to paint the ice during one of the World of Winter events. So we just want people to enjoy the city all year round.
Great. Well, I hope you brought your ice skates. We can go down to the rink as soon as this show is over. But that's all the time we have today. So thank you to our guest, Commissioner Milinda Ysasi, and for everyone who came and asked questions. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next year in 2024.
Yes. Thanks.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, The Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection, where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events, from concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen, as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.